Today we are joined by Tiffany Elle of Versum Materials. I got to sit down with Tiffany in Phoenix at her corporate headquarters and learn all about her communication strategy. She has been wildly successful and actually has a 96% active adoption rate on her branded application, and we talk all about how she got there. Please sit back and enjoy. But before you do, please go ahead, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or Google, wherever it may be, please go to the rate and review section, give us a 5-star review, and tell us how we're doing because we want to know. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. Today we are going to talk with Tiffany Elle. She is the Senior Global Communications Manager at Versum Materials. And Tiffany, thank you so much for coming here today. We're really excited to learn from you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
That's great. So right off the bat, I just want to say if we hit the rewind button and you don't have a branded employee app available to your entire organization, what was communication even like before that?
So let's back up a little bit.
Sure.
So we're really unique in the sense that our business has been around for 40 years, but our company has only been around for 2 years. So we spun off from a much larger company that had an intranet platform that was SharePoint based. And one of the things when I was brought on about 3 months after we spun off was to look for ways to innovate how we communicate with our employees. So when we did the initial spinoff, as I mentioned, we had contracted with someone to do just a bare bones SharePoint site. And that allowed our employees to get, access to corporate policies and who to contact. And it was a new company, so there were a lot of new faces. But it was just very, very minimal. And so we relied on that, and it was kludgy and, not very friendly for our employees to use, and their graphics weren't great, and it was just so, it was a lot of emails. We did some town halls and whatnot, but we really wanted to elevate it and really put the focus on technology because we're a technology company.
Right.
So why wouldn't you have your employee experience be what your vision is, right?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of when we started looking at, how do we, kind of end of life this really awful SharePoint site that we had, but leverage the resources that we had built upon within the environment.
Sure.
Right? So here we are.
That's wonderful. And I think it would be helpful just to talk a little bit about what you guys do a little bit further, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So Versum Materials is a material sciences company that manufactures materials for semiconductor fabricators. So those actual wafers that get made. They need chemicals and slurries and all this really good stuff that goes into polishing the wafers and making sure that they get produced properly. So we're really unique in the sense that we, in the 7 stages of wafer fabrication, we play in most of them. I think there's one that we're not on, but it's really exciting.
Yeah.
But it's real innovative technology, and so we have a lot of engineers and chemists and non-desk employees that go into our customers and actually help them utilize the materials that we manufacture.
Right.
So for us, really making sure that we're hitting those non-desk employees is so important because they're not logging into their PC every day.
Right.
So how do we speak to them and make sure that they're not missing out on important communication?
That's excellent. And so we've had these conversations with in other episodes with other communicators, and there seems to be this real struggle to find unique, creative, and ongoing ways to just get people to read, to respond, to just be active participants.
Right.
And I'm, coming up with this communication strategy is no small feat. And I'm just curious, I would love to hear from you some of your successes in how you've overcome that.
I think there is a lot of interest from employees to know what's going on in an organization. So we're relatively new, as I mentioned. There's a lot of change going on. And so with that change, our employees really are curious. They want to understand what's going on within the organization. But more so, I think there's a fear of missing out. So kind of playing on that in terms of, gosh, what's happening that I don't know about, and who knows about it first. Right. And so in launching a platform like Staffbase, we were able to kind of, hey, here's the everything that's going on in the organization, and people are liking and commenting and kind of talking about what they're finding, and they're evangelizing the message. So I think you're giving them a platform to say, hey, this is really important to me, and it's probably going to be really important to you. So if you ignored an email that came through, hey, check it out because everyone's talking about it. And you don't have that with an email.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And also, it sounds like the deskless part, I feel like, is so important.
Absolutely.
You have so many people that probably don't access email, period.
Correct.
Or the way that they function doesn't require them to go to a machine and look at anything other than maybe what they're required to do, or there's no machine, period. So this idea of, there's two parts to what you were saying that I found really interesting. So one part was this deskless worker aspect, which I think is so prevalent in this space of this need to communicate. And on the other hand, there's also this, I feel like there's this little bit of a fear factor that people are like, maybe they don't want to be communicated with. Maybe they don't want to participate, but quite the contrary. And that's one of the first things you said was people want to be involved.
Yes. Right. And then there's also that fear of, what do I know?
Yeah.
Or what don't I know?
Sure.
Right. And so if they're concerned about what's happening within maybe their site location, but maybe other sites are being, have an influence on what's going on with their role in the organization, they want to know about that.
Yeah.
And I think so often managers might, communicate just to their team without thinking of how those aspects have, or, those repercussions kind of spread throughout the organization, right? So for us, it's really important to be transparent.
Yeah.
And so we give them that opportunity to opt into the groups that they want to learn more about, right? And some of them have team members that they work with on an everyday basis in a certain site. And so it's really helpful for them to say, oh, what's really interesting? They had a guest speaker come in, and I learned about it on the app, and wow, it's really cool because I wouldn't have known about that, and we wouldn't have had this side discussion afterwards. So it's really empowering the employees to get the information that they want on their time.
Right.
Right. And I think so often, and it's probably the same with you, right? You're sitting at your daughter's preschool or, your soccer game or something, and you just kind of want to catch up on what you missed, but you don't want to read through emails, right?
No.
So, but I am kind of curious, in terms of, what's happening and what did I miss that, now I'm on my time and I'm on my phone or I'm on my iPad and maybe I'm sitting at the airport or maybe I'm, just kind of decompressing from the day, but again, that curiosity factor, I think people just, want to participate. So, the mobile platform just gives them such a great opportunity for, if they didn't log in that day, they can go and check it on their time.
And that's something too that I've been learning a lot about is when with it being mobile first in mind, and with like at the soccer game,
right,
when you're commuting to the airport,
yep,
there's a lot of power in being given a platform that is easy to leverage on a mobile device.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and not only for the readers,
right,
the contributors as well.
Absolutely.
Right? So, we'll have teams that are at trade shows or something, and they're in there posting, real-time updates on what's going on or who's sitting in our trade show booth talking to us.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's a really good opportunity, right? Or our CEO could be traveling to a location and do a post and kind of show people real time what he's up to and really build that relationship with the employees.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. We've got a ton of great content that covers the full journey of deploying a branded employee app. Go to staffbase.com, click on resources, and select Employee App Guide. That's it. Best wishes and back to the show. Yeah, and it's just like, it sounds like what you've really captured is the human element. It's like, how
Absolutely.
do I figure out a way to dampen the feeling that you're unnumbered, just another
Exactly.
employee, but you're part of something.
You bet.
And it's great that you said that some leadership members can just get a webcam and start recording or start writing something and just start communicating. And it doesn't need to be professional. Doesn't
Right.
need to be. It's just, as long as it's just a real conversation.
Exactly.
That's where that authenticity comes from.
Exactly. And that transparency that, at our company, at least, we're striving so hard to achieve because things move so fast in this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful too, and with something like that, right? I'm assuming you've been given opportunities when someone can say, "Hey, that was a rough weekend. That was tough." And it's just like this, I just want to, kind of figure out a way to put my arms around everybody and pat them on the back. Thank you for your efforts.
Absolutely.
That goes a long way.
Absolutely. So we do things like employee spotlights, where we highlight key employees or key teams that accomplished a big project. And we see the engagement levels just go up so much because people are excited to learn about all the good things that we're doing in the organization and really get to know their peers. We've got 14 locations all over the world.
Wow.
And so, we've got folks that speak, several languages. So how do we communicate with them in a aspect that means something to them, but also with, provides translations, so they can really better understand on their own terms, what they're reading about and what they, how they're participating with their peers.
Oh, that's great. I have to ask you this one question. So I heard from our CMO that since deploying a branded mobile application, you've actually stopped to some degree leveraging SharePoint. And I'd love to just get a little bit more of a understanding about that without poo-pooing SharePoint, but just wondering about the whole situation.
SharePoint is a great tool.
Yeah.
It is a great tool, but it's not necessarily mobile first.
Sure, okay.
Right? And so I think for non-desk employees, we needed something better. For our organization, we needed something more.
Sure.
And we didn't kill SharePoint altogether. We still maintain our document control system in that type of environment. So all of our policies are linked to it. We have several team sites that utilize it to maintain their documentation or collaboration initiatives. So we haven't killed it.
Right.
But what we have done is removed it from our intranet environment.
Sure.
Right? So our intranet for internal communications, where our employees go to get onboarding information, where our employees go to get information, with regards to policies. We link to SharePoint from our staff base app.
Right.
So, and it's seamless. So we do it in a Office 360, we're a completely O365 environment. So, we're using Azure, we're using single sign-on. So as long as the employee signed in through single sign-on, everything else just works.
Right.
Right? And so what our IT department really loved about that was, look, it's one less thing they have to maintain. We're on a cloud-based system.
Yeah.
They don't need to hire developers. Oh, and by the way, when we scoped out building a SharePoint intranet, it was 6 times the cost of what we ended up with.
Okay.
So it was out of scope. It was
Yeah.
completely out of the budget.
Right.
And we knew at the end of the day we weren't going to get what we wanted because it wasn't going to be mobile.
Right. Interesting. And I think you really tapped into something. You were talking about a little bit about the deskless workers, but then you also said it's not going away. But it's still housing all of that pertinent policy, documentation,
Absolutely.
everything. However, rather than having that be the starting point, you kind of flip that on its head and say, look, fellow staff member, you have this phone on your hand.
Absolutely.
You have it says Versum right here, you tap on it,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's how you access those documentations. That's how you access the policies, et cetera.
So when you're posting articles or you're posting content, it's not going to a black hole anymore,
Right.
which is huge. And we still have the capability within the app and the way that we set up the architecture of it. They can still search SharePoint in our app. So we're not taking it away from them.
Right.
We're just giving them a better platform.
Right. That's really great. So I think that is it's unfortunately a complicated topic.
Yeah.
Because it sounds scary. It sounds like a battle.
It couldn't be less scary. I mean, so take it from me. I am a department of one.
Right. Okay.
And this tool has given me everything I need to run completely independent in terms of I don't have to rely on my IT department to support it. I don't have to, I don't have to spend time asking team members for help.
Right.
The platform. And again, you're not paying me to tell you this.
Yes.
But I am so grateful for it because it has just streamlined my day-to-day operations. And
right.
Again, being a department of one, I have other things to do.
Sure.
So being able to curate content, work with other site contributors, and kind of moderate it, it's a fun part of my day.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. This is great. We could talk about this for hours. This is really exciting stuff. You've talked about where you were before. You've talked about how you've given a new way to access really important information.
Absolutely.
You've talked about providing the application to folks that didn't have access to this type of content in a very easy way before.
Absolutely.
How are you, now that you've deployed this branded application?
Yes.
How are you, I guess, from your point of view, how are you best leveraging the technology in front of your organization?
I think it's part of our corporate culture right now, right? And so our kind of theory with regards to anything that we deploy throughout the organization is when we do when we launch a new app or when we launch anything with regards to IT, it's got to be any device, anywhere, anytime, right?
Yes.
And so single sign-on allows us to do that.
Sure.
But really, it's just the employees using the app evangelize it. They rely on it, So it's part of our culture. And, I don't think you have to leverage anything in order to say, hey, it's just who we are and it's how we communicate. And people really love it.
I love that there's that evangelism is happening from it. I think that's so important to build up that brand excitement. It's almost like brand within the brand itself, and it's really that's excellent. Great. So then, if that's the way that it is today, what's next? What is the next exciting thing that you're looking to do in terms of where you see mobile is offering it to you?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's kind of in your hands at this point. And I will say you guys have done a really great job in terms of, every new release comes with features that was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant. Or it's just making our lives so much easier. And I really like the sandbox that we have as users to be able to go in and make suggestions, and then having the community be able to go in and rank and kind of comment on what do we want to see in the next generation of the tool. Things change so quickly that it helps to have a community behind you of users that are feeling your pain.
Yeah.
And so it's been really good that over the last 11 months since we've deployed, I feel like I do have a community of people that I can go to and, run ideas past and do a better job for our employees.
That's wonderful. I have to go a little off the rails just because you got me interested. We talked a little bit about this in one of the earlier questions, but I've been fascinated with this idea of really, really respecting that this is a personal device.
Absolutely.
And so I have to ask you, in terms of how you discipline yourself, in terms of when you're communicating, when you're leveraging things like push notifications,
right,
when you're trying to keep this excitement and activity going, but also be disciplined enough and respect that maybe they don't want 15 alerts throughout the day.
Absolutely.
I'd love to get your input on that experience and some of just what you've gone through to kind of navigate your way through all that.
Certainly. So we've got different channels set up in our app.
Yeah.
And it depends on what channel is publishing. And we have a very extensive editorial calendar that maintains kind of here's what's going out, here's what's going to get pushed. And we try to limit it to 1 or 2 a day at the very most of what gets pushed. Now, we might have 5 things get published in that day, but really once we do that push notification, they're reading that article and then they're clicking on the homepage because all the other little notifications in the navigation are showing them what else is new. So that helps us kind of better manage the process. And then as we communicate with other messages, we're constantly linking other articles that we've already published to remind them, hey, if you didn't see this when we did publish it, go check it out because it's still very relevant to what we're communicating today. So, I mean, it's the whole, you've got such a great repository of content, it just makes sense to repurpose it.
Right. Oh, I like that a lot. I have to then go into the next part of that, which is you mentioned earlier, and I think some people listening might do a double check. You said you are a team of 1.
Yes.
And so I happen to know, because our customer success team happened to reach out to me before when they found out we were going to be speaking, saying, ask Tiffany how she gets so many people to contribute and be part of your content strategy. Walk us through how you are very successful in doing this, and it's wonderful. And so we just love to know a little bit of what's the secret sauce.
So I think the secret sauce is just having a really good platform in terms of, who are your thought leaders within the organization, who shares passion, who is the subject matter expert, right? And those are the people that are influencers within the organization. And so when we kind of establish what does our menu structure look like and what channels are we going to offer, we have channels set up by site, we have channels set up by, or news groups set up by a roll-up of all of the regions that we operate in. We have channels that are specific to different departments like quality or EH&S, human resources. And so we have identified, who are the key contributors in those areas that are going to be accountable for making sure that content is posted, moderated. But they would be doing it anyway. They would just be pushing it out to email or on a SharePoint black hole and hoping that people see it. So this gives them the opportunity to really share things that are meaningful to them. And the best part is that it gives them analytics to see what is resonating with the employees, right? So we can look at comments, we can look at what the number of likes are. But then in the back end, we can see the number of readers, we can see the engagement taken. So it is really, really important for their success in terms of, hey, I might be a department of 1 helping, kind of steer the boat, but for the people that are, this is part of their MBO to make sure that somebody knows about open enrollment, right? Well, they have the opportunity to do that.
That's great.
And we can tweak things along the way, right?
Yeah.
So, again, we talked about kind of on the fly editing, right? If you've posted something and you realize, oh no, there was a typo and I sent out something with a typo. Right on your phone, you can go fix it, and it never happened.
That's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. So yeah, it's even though I mean, the party of 1, but you have found a way to look at your internal influencers and getting them to participate. I think that is a really powerful message for anyone listening, to seek out those subject matter experts.
Absolutely.
Seek out those influencers, those people that you have champions out there.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting too, because we have employees that come up and say, hey, I have an article idea. I think it would be really cool to share it. And so, all right, well, tell me more. And we'll go ahead and publish it. And there's pride in that, So it's just been a really great way to engage with our employees.
That's great. It's just to find opportunities to get that level of activity, engagement, and you even started tapping into the metrics, because I know that there is something really powerful. You're absolutely right. When someone post something, and then they can tap on that and go, whoa, I
Absolutely.
didn't realize that this was going to be so wildly successful.
Right. Or gosh, I thought people would care about
exactly.
it.
Yes.
You know?
But that's equally as helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ah, that's great. This is excellent. So, okay, with all of that being said, if you met someone tomorrow that was really thinking about going forward with a branded mobile application, what would be the one piece of advice you would tell that person?
I would say take a look at how people want to be communicated to, right? And not just people, but your employees. They want to be communicated to on a personal level, something that's meaningful to them on their own time. When they want it, when they need to consume that information, right? And is that message a video? Is it words? Is it an infographic? You know, is it just a graphic that says "Have a great day"? You know, something just so basic. You know, but it's not always going to be a one-size-fits-all scenario for the different types of messaging that you need to put out there. Right? And again, tell them what you told them again, so that people really absorb that information. This app gives you the opportunity to do that, but it also gives them the opportunity to go back and reread things that matter to them too, right? So it's kind of twofold. But I would say if you're embarking on this and you're exploring all the options that are out there, just find something that talks to those non-desk employees, means something to the employees, right? Puts them in control and engages them with the different aspects of how they want to be communicated to.
Yeah.
You know, so I'll go back to our SharePoint site, right? It was very bare bones when we started it. And it was designed that way on purpose. But it only gave me the opportunity to put a very small thumbnail graphic in, and then like a title, and then they'd have to click into it and then read the article. But the article wasn't engaging. You know, I couldn't upload a video and embed it the way that it was designed. So there's just better options out there. And I think for the IT departments that are evaluating it, how much do they really want to be involved in managing an intranet?
Right.
And if the answer is, that's not my job is to just make sure that the tool is functionable and, you know, I don't have to maintain it, I don't have to hire coders, I don't have to hire developers, I don't have to resource it. You're saving money by looking at a platform that's, you know, cloud-based and that, your comms team can go run with and bring you in when you need to communicate something, not because you have to fix something.
That's really an interesting perspective. It's not pushing IT away. It's actually allowing them to do what they wanted to do in the first place.
Absolutely.
That's really an interesting perspective. And just having the comfort that you and the influencers that you're working on it's self-sufficient. You're okay.
Absolutely.
And then when, there's that 2.0 option down the road where like, oh, hey, we could, if people are tapping on this application to get to their documents, where else could we point them? And then it's a conversation about enablement versus a conversation about like, okay, what's this investment? What are we going to switch it out with? All that.
Well, and it's interesting too, because, kind of building on that aspect, when we were doing the evaluation, we brought in our EH&S team, we brought in human resources, we had folks from finance on, we had, different levels within the organization who all had different ways of communicating. And just based on legacy, having, been part of this other larger company for so many years. And with the ability to have forms, surveys, the ability to do just, like the spot, how are you feeling today type of engagement, right?
Yeah.
We were able to remove at least 2 applications that I'm aware of out of our budget because we could do it in the app. Right? So for forms that we used to have to maintain in Word, and now we can do performance reviews, by utilizing form distribution in that app, restricting it specifically to the user group that we have assigned as managers, right? So there's just some things that, it's beyond the communication platform.
Yes.
It's actually become a tool. And so we're able to deploy things that would have been resourced somewhere else in yet another application that our team would have had to go log into and manage and get another team involved, right?
Thanks for listening to the podcast. We've got a ton of great content that covers the full journey of deploying a branded employee app. Go to staffbase.com, click on resources, and select Employee App Guide. That's it. Best wishes and back to the show. I mean, that is the conversation I'm a very excitable person. I get very excited about stuff. And when you talk about being able to, when you say something like it's not just a communications platform, it's a tool, it's a platform that it's a gateway, a front door to all of this. That's when I think that really helps with that question about what would you say to someone that is really starting to consider this, because I think that most of the time when people are thinking that they're going to go forward with an employee app, they're only thinking about one thing. Is they're probably thinking about, I have this pain, and it's called, I'm having a really hard time effectively communicating.
Sure.
And so I think hearing you explain that the communication is just the beginning.
Absolutely.
Is really interesting. It makes it a little bit more complicated to when you're really focused on that pain. You're like, I can't even think about these other things, but that's okay because the communication is there and it's really easy.
But that's the pain from someone in communications.
Fair. Okay, that's
right?
Very good point.
So what keeps our EH&S team awake at night is, oh my gosh, what if there was an emergency and I have to evacuate and I don't have time to grab my evacuation binder as something terrible's happening. Well, now they grab their phone. And we've set up our app so that our crisis management, the entire process is in the app. And they have, every time we list a phone number in the app, we hyperlink it so it's a dialable phone number, right? So they can call, they can get a hold of each other. They have their entire playbook embedded in the app, right? Now, that's not a communication tool.
Right.
But it's a lot easier than trying to struggle to find something in another portfolio or another application in an emergency when you're not thinking.
Right.
So here we've given them a pocket playbook.
Yeah.
And they can maintain it, they completely own it, and they love it.
Wow. So maybe another way to answer, just digesting everything you just told me, is if you're really thinking about going forward with something like this, maybe it's find a couple of heroes or champions within those different departments that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Have a lunch, talk about well, here's my pain, what's your pain?
Absolutely. And it's not always just about communication.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
HR is going to come to you and say, well, we have a requisition form or we have interview questionnaires. How do we deploy that? Well, have you thought about putting it in the app? Because you can do drop-down lists. You can route it. You can do all these different things that, while you're in the interview, you could be filling it out and be on your iPad.
All right.
Right? Or you could share your notes and, be completely remote, completely anywhere, any device, anytime.
Right.
With so many different resources that we can embed in the app.
Maybe the word communication is the problem or part of the problem. And if you have information that you need to share.
Right.
That is communications to
Absolutely.
a certain extent.
It's resources.
Right.
It's communications. How are you making your employees empowered to get the information that they need to be successful and safe?
Yes. I'm not going to ask anything else because that was so good. That was great. I think you already I'm going to ask it again, but if you could find, I'd like to ask this question because it's kind of fun. If you could find one sentence to define the business value of a branded mobile application, what would it be?
I think you know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to give you 3 words.
Okay.
Empower your employees.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that goes right back to everything we were just discussing. It's that in those cases of emergency, when you're trying to feel like a human being amongst a sea of people.
Absolutely.
Giving them you actually mentioned this too, you're giving people the capability to respond and react and communicate with people that they might not have ever communicated with before.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
14 different locations?
14 different locations, almost 2,400 employees.
Wow, yeah.
And we have about 96% of the employees that have activated their account.
96%.
96%. And that was within the first 4 months. So they did it very quickly. And I think one of our concerns was, is everyone going to flock to this?
Right.
It's different, right? We've moved their cheese. Are they going to be okay with the environment and the platform that we've chosen? And at the end of the day, absolutely. And I will say those 4% are either brand new hires.
Right.
As of like this morning, or maybe they'll watch this podcast and like start clicking and saying, I'm sorry.
That'd be awesome.
But then we also have, long-term leave employees, right? So they're on medical leave or something of the sort. And so that's normal, but for the most part, about 70% of our employees engage with the app every single week. And that's pretty great because when I would do my metrics in terms of who was opening my emails, and I'm embarrassed to even tell you, it was like 20%.
Yeah, that's unfortunately very common.
Yeah,
and that's assuming how many what percentage of the organization even has email to begin with.
Yes, very true.
So that's tough.
And by using the groups in the app, we can better segment the audience. And because we have a feed that we have with our HRIS system. So as new employees are onboarded, it becomes part of the workflow. So they go into the system. When employees depart, their system access is cut off because it's single sign-on. So I no longer have to maintain or rely on Active Directory and then call IT saying, hey, I need you to create a report so that I can do a targeted email to this particular group of people that I will never email again. But I can do that in the app.
That's great.
Yeah.
Man, so, all right, we talked about your ability to create content creators through the influencers.
Yep.
Your 3 words about a branded employee application is empower your employees. I love that. I have to just do some numbers a little bit. You started talking about that a little bit more about the you said 96%? That's wild.
Yep.
That is wild. So if it's okay to expand a little bit on that, because I know people are curious about it. Like you said, that was in the first 4 months you had that much activation?
Yes.
You had to have done something special.
FOMO.
Really?
FOMO.
Wow.
So I would send out manager reports letting them know, hey, here's the 4 people at your location that haven't activated or, whatnot. And kind of embarrassing, but they would forward my email to those people. I'm like, no, don't do that. Just have a nice conversation.
Right.
And remind them that, hey, if they don't activate, they're not going to know about the next town hall meeting. They're going to not find out when our open enrollment starts. Don't they want to know about what our financial performance is looking like? Anything like that, right? So I had management support. They did a really good job. But then I would do an export of the users that hadn't activated. And I just do a little simple mail merge. Customize it, make them feel loved and special. And hey, by the way, here are 3 things that you probably would be very interested in because they're related to your site specifically. And boom, everyone's curious. And they activate it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that, coupled with for new user onboarding,
Yes.
It's really essentially you have to have it because
It's part of your job.
it's part of your job.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. Now, we don't require all of our employees to download the app on their phone or their device because it is their, we don't compensate people for that. So I will say, take that into consideration.
Sure.
But we're still seeing the adoption rate.
That's something I was actually talking to our CMO, Frank Wolf, about in a different episode, was just it is a very interesting dynamic to see how many people are leveraging mobile versus desktop. Kind of awakening. And then it also helps you steer the type of content that you should be pushing out.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last and final question. Are you working on anything really fun?
So, World Diversity Day is May 21st. And again, 2,400 employees, 14 locations around the world. We are doing a global scavenger hunt.
Whoa.
So we have 50 questions that we're going to be deploying through the app. And they're questions like, who was educated in a country outside of where they currently reside? Or who lives on a farm? Or who has a twin? One of my favorite questions is, who has a hedgehog? So they have to figure out who they are going to, they have to fill in the blanks, and they can only name one employee per form that they're going to be submitting. So you can't answer the same employee 3 times if they happen to know that.
Right.
So we're really looking at leveraging the content that we've already published.
Yeah.
And by the way, for any Versum employee that's looking, yes, National Pet Day, somebody did mention they have a hedgehog. So if they go into the app, they're going to be able to do a little bit of research and find out who we've already talked about. Fantastic. So yeah, we're leveraging the content. We're leveraging the opportunity to further engage with our employees to get to know them better. And then the content that we receive back, we're going to put into different articles. So we're building content. So I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited about it, and I mean, I want to participate. I want to see who has a hedgehog. I have to read that.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Tiffany, this has been eye-opening, quite frankly, and just so helpful to understand the journey that is. And I think just because you are a team of one, I think that just shows with 2,400 people, 14 different locations. Team of one, you found how, and 96% adoption.
Yeah.
And the remaining is folks that shouldn't be activated anyway, essentially.
They're not necessarily active employees.
Right.
So yeah, we would expect that.
Yeah, which is outstanding. I think that really just makes the case for, okay, it's not easy. There's a lot of work ahead.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to be inspiring some folks for sure.
It's fun and meaningful work.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, isn't that what you want to be able to tell your family when you go home?
Yes.
What I do is meaningful.
Yeah.
So yeah, we love it. We're very glad to be a customer. Very grateful that the platform has been so well received. And there's a lot of things people complain about, but this isn't one of them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks.
Shut this off. That was great.